Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to Anime Octane, the show in which we, the folks at Nerd Caliber, talk about some interesting topic in the field of anime. Normally, what we do, or most commonly what we do in the show, is we'll look at a specific anime that is currently airing or has just closed, and we'll talk about it in a spoilery fashion, where we have to go in depth on it and we look at things that we liked and we didn't, and so on. Tonight, we're doing something different, as we occasionally do. The winter 2022 season wrapped up just this last week, a couple of weeks ago for some shows. And so tonight, I'm going to be doing my favorite, my least favorite, and my most meh shows of winter season 2022. I am Rodney Brown, the editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber, first-person shooter on Facebook and Instagram as a cosplay photographer, Burley_adopter on Twitter, a couple of other places doing a couple of other things. Before we get started, we got in the chat already, Harry Brady, welcome back to the show. Let's see, we got anybody else in either Facebook Live or Twitch? Not yet, but speaking of Twitch, we'll get that Twitch promo out of the way. We are looking to build our following on Twitch to be like the quite good interactive following we have on Facebook Live and YouTube. If you have a Twitch account, love to have you go to that URL right there on your screen, twitch.tv/nerdcaliber, and consider following us. Love to have you. Love to have your interaction there on Twitch as well as the other platforms that we do this live, 3 shows every week. All right, so winter season 2022. So we came off of an absolutely outstanding 2021. Almost every season had Anime of the Year contenders, some of them multiple Anime of the Year contenders. And so we started off 2022. The winter season is the first. It begins in January, the first quarter of the year. Not so much. There are some absolutely spectacular shows. There's a lot of mid, and then some real garbage. But there's nothing that I would say like we had in winter 2021, where just instantly everything was absolutely... There's so many shows that were fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to structure this like I'll do a worst, a mid, and a best, and then another worst, mid, and a best, so that I mix it up a little bit so everybody gets a sense of what it is that what I think of, what my opinion is. And by the way, anybody who pops into the chat, feel free to weigh in on your opinions on my opinions or your opinions on the shows that I'm mentioning. Of course, as I always do with any of these shows where we have a list of some sort, I don't want to give any stuff away. So all of the images that you saw in the opening teaser that ran before we actually went live at 8, none of those are in. I don't think any of them were actually in winter 2022. There might have been one. I don't remember what I put in there. I just grabbed, any anime image I already had in a file. So we're going to start with one of the worst of this, and in this case worst, I'm going to say because it was so disappointing. And that is Orient. Orient is, according to the write-up here on my anime list, says, freed from the rule of samurai 150 years ago, the people of Hinamoto live peaceful lives and revere their liberators, who are demons whose true form remain elusive as gods. Musashi is fated to mine rocks for the demons to feast on, but he knows the truth that humanity is enslaved by these otherworldly beings, and the samurai that they have taught people to hate are the last bastion fighting for freedom. Hiding his true opinion from his peers makes him grow distant from his childhood friend, Kanamaki Kojiro. He graduates from school, goes to work in the mines. Things are horrible, and he and his childhood friend and other people have to, get together and try to open people's eyes and defeat the demons. And so this was based on a manga written by Otaka Shinobu, the mangaka that created the Magi series. Magi: The Labyrinth of Magic, which was turned into two animes, Magi: The Labyrinth of Magic and Magi: The Kingdom of Magic, which are really excellent anime series. You know, the young, I think he's like 13, protagonist Aladdin's proclivity for inappropriately and without consent groping women with large breasts aside, it's a very well structured, very interesting update and very Japanese take on some of the characters and story settings from Arabian Nights or 1001 Nights and a Night. Aladdin, Sinbad, people like that. Otaka-san's most recent work here, Orient, started in 2018 and is currently ongoing. And the manga may be just as good as Magi. I don't know. I haven't read the manga. I can tell you the anime is not good. I wouldn't go so far as to say terrible, but the first episode, the decisions on how to start the episode, introduce the characters, the animation quality or incredible lack thereof, is just mind-boggling. It starts with a narrator doing an overview that lays out this sort of world that goes on as long, probably twice as long as what I just read from my anime list about what this is about. It's just, the character designs are awful. It's just not good. Here's another image from Orient, and you can see, the two main characters. Musashi is the one in the red hair. I even forgot his name again. Kanjuro, I think, is the one with a more traditional samurai outfit, because he is from a samurai family, one of the last of the reviled samurai families. And you see they're facing an army. The army behind that demon is completely, absolutely identical copy-paste CGI soldiers. Like no effort put into this whatsoever. And again, that's a real shame, because Magi, the two Magi series, actually three, there was one specifically about Sinbad, is good. They're good series. I would definitely recommend watching them. I would not recommend watching this. Orient, give it a pass. Now it wasn't the worst. That's coming up later, but it was among the worst of the winter season. Mid. The first one I'm going to talk about is a mid. God, I got to remember what they use for this name. All right, here we go. This is She Professed Herself a Pupil of the Wise Man. So the gist here is that it's a isekai story in which the characters have been isekai'd for an incredibly long time. So this character here, Mira, is actually this Gandalf-looking elder, super powerful sage, one of the 9 wise mages, as they were called, that were all player characters that had somehow been isekai'd into this world. And through a stupid mistake in trying to change his appearance, this mage named Danbalf accidentally turned himself into a petite young woman. And the anime is basically about the hijinks that ensue while now calling herself Mari, Danbalf doesn't want anybody to know that she was Danbalf, which would just be too difficult to explain to people. And the premise is dumb. And again, it's a first episode problem in that the structure of the first episode doesn't explain what happened until literally the end of the episode, when she shows up to talk to the ruler of this, the country that most of these people are from, these 9, sages, King Solomon, he's called. And basically then it has to explain, what's going on. It's mind-bogglingly stupid isn't the right word. It just doesn't make any sense for them to structure the first episode in such a way that you watch it and go, what? I mean, if I hadn't read the premise, I would have not known whatsoever what had happened to Don Belf and why we're now looking at this, lolly for the rest of the episode. Until they got to the end. Now, of course, most people do watch the teasers and they do read the synopsis of what the show's going to be about to decide whether or not they want to watch it. So I had an idea, but then I'm still thinking, okay, when are they going to explain to the audience or anybody what's going on here? Not until the very end of the episode. And that period from when Don Belf turns into Mira, almost until she gets to Solomon, there's no dialogue at all. It's just her figuring out, including things like figuring out that, apparently, women and girls have to go to the bathroom more often than guys. It's just, and it doesn't get much smarter. It is mildly interesting in the setup of like the towers that she's going to try to find any of the other 9 mages that might still be around, or sages that might still be around, and the guardians of these towers. Some of them are actually kind of interesting, but that's it. It is a ridiculously overpowered character in an isekai, and they think that the fact that it is a we have no idea what the person who was Don Belf's player, I don't recall that we ever see this, in the real world before they became isekai'd is like. But the character Don Belf originally is an old man. So we see an old man become a young lolly, essentially, and it's like, oh, okay, that's supposed to be funny. And it just, honestly, this and the other one that I'm going to get into in the mids, I don't know why I finished it. I guess because it was never bad. And because some of the things were kind of interesting, again, like the guardians at these various towers and so on, that I just kind of cruised through most of the meh, which is almost all her interaction with Solomon or anybody else. And thinking, okay, well, maybe things are going to get as interesting as these tower guardians are. Nope. It just runs its course. Episode 12, done. Okay, thanks. So, yeah, about as mid as you can get. All right. One of the best, without a doubt, My Dress Up Darling. I talked about this twice already in this season. Very early on when we looked at the things we thought were going to be the best. And then I think when it wrapped up, I did why My Dress Up Darling is an amazing show. But if you haven't heard of this, and I can't imagine you're an anime fan and have not heard of this. So again, here's the description. High school student Wakana Gojo. Gojo spends his days perfecting the art of making Hina dolls. As a child, he went to live with his grandpa after his parents died, and his grandpa is a master maker of Hina dolls. Those are the very small, porcelain-headed Japanese dolls in traditional Japanese costume. Hoping to eventually reach his grandfather's level of expertise, but he had a female friend in grade school who found out that this was his hobby, and she basically called him a weirdo and a creep. And so now he shuns telling anybody about it, and he basically has no friends. He encounters, because she falls onto his desk, Kitagawa Marin, who is described here, an extraordinary pretty girl whose confidence and poise are in stark contrast to Gojo's meekness. She is a Garu, as you can see, or Garu, as you can see from the image here. Blonde hair. She always wears violet-colored contacts. She has multiple piercings. Wears her skirt, way too short. But unlike most portrayals of Garu in Japanese or in anime, she's not vulgar. She's blunt and very straightforward, but in a very pleasant way. She's got lots of friends, and they're not the mean girls, which is again the way Garu often portrayed in Japanese anime as a sort of mean girls clique. She stumbles across Gojo after they first meet, or sort of meet. I mean, they both sort of know that they exist in the same class. After class, when he is working on a Hina doll costume on a sewing machine in the unused home ec room, and she just loses it out of happiness because she is a wannabe cosplayer and is just really terrible at making costumes. Rusty Dog Games, welcome to the show. We are talking about, as it says in the teaser, in the thumbnail, the best and the worst and the most mid anime of the winter 2022 season. Right now I'm on one of the best, which is My Dress Up Darling. So what proceeds from there is the relationship building between them of Gojo helping her out making costumes. Turns out he is, because of his experience and just the nature of how detailed and practical he is, an amazing cosplay costume maker. And Marin, who is a fantastic cosplayer, absolutely loves cosplay, loves dressing up, loves being the character, is a total otaku weeb. Like, really, seriously. And Gojo, one of the things that he first finds interesting about her is that she criticizes another classmate for dumping on some guy's hobby or some guy's interest. And she says, hey, everybody has their own hobbies. Now, you shouldn't criticize somebody for that. And he thinks, oh, that's not what I've heard from people before. So that gets him interested to start off. It is a rom-com. It is very funny. The characterizations are fantastic because they are so rarely seen in Japanese rom-coms. It's a lot more like Horimiya in that both of the characters are very honest and straightforward about what they want. They haven't yet gotten to the point where, and this is kind of a spoiler, but they don't confess to each other by the end of this season, assuming there will be multiple seasons. But it's clear that they both are absolutely smitten with each other and are both very happy about that. There's none of the sort of made up or false drama that occurs in some shows where they have to try to make it about, oh, I don't want to be in love, or oh, I really don't like this. They like each other as friends, as co-workers isn't the right word, but co-hobbyists within different aspects of cosplay, and they fall in love with each other. And both are very happy about that. And that's really wonderful. It is also one of the most outstanding ecchi fests ever seen. This is, about as horny an anime as you can get. And yet it is as wholesome because their relationship is as wholesome as it can get. It's much more mature in how it deals with that ecchi. Even though they're high school students, they more accurately deal with these glimpses and reveals and things than almost any other anime. There's none of this fake shame and almost no stupid reasons for why this stuff happened. The second episode, Gojo has to take Marin's measurements. And so she shows up in a bikini because she needs to get the measurements as close to actual, body, but obviously she's not going to stand there naked in front of a guy she just met. But she's fine doing it in a bikini. She's a pretty, forward-thinking young woman for Japan. So the ecchi is all shown from Gojo's perspective. There's plenty of male gaze, but it is literally that male's gaze. If the camera focuses on, her bikini bottom as she's bending over to pick something up, it then cuts to Gojo trying really hard not to stare and failing. So that's really smartly done. Later on in the series, it devolves into some really more standard sort of male gaze stuff that isn't in any way representational of anything that's actually happening in the episode or what would be a view of somebody who's in that episode. And unfortunately, it happens around one of Marin's idols is a cosplayer, Juju. They eventually meet her. Juju is a very petite but upperclassman, and in a different school. And her photographer and wannabe cosplayer is her younger sister, her middle school age sister, Shinju, who is tall as pretty much as tall as Gojo, and busty as hell. Now we've got a shot. This is all of them sitting around the first time they meet Shinju. So Juju is the little pink-haired one in the behind Shinju. The tall girl with the large sweater protrusions in the foreground is the middle school Shinju, Juju's sister. The episode, and I won't get into any details because I don't want to do spoilers, but the episode in which Gojo winds up working with Shinju more than anybody else is just, it's the one episode where it literally falls into mostly stereotypical male gaze type ecchi stuff. But for most part, that isn't the case in this series, and that's really refreshing. And just here is their very first cosplay event, the very first costume Gojo makes for Marin, and Marin in this character. I won't even describe who the character is, because that is one of the best final jokes in a first episode ever. It's really funny. It's really wholesome. It's really ecchi, and it's absolutely worth watching. All right. So now we're getting to. Did I work these backwards? Oh, I did. Okay. All right. My next worst, and this is worst. I don't think there's any question about that. Rusted Armors. So, last year brought us the horrible X-Arm in winter 2022, and it then brought us God, I can't even remember the name of it. I only saw one episode. Another CGI anime nightmare, better than X-Arm to be sure, but still not very good. And this season we get Rusted Armors. That's one of the better images right there of the CG. This is one of the worst. It's X-Arm. It is as bad as X-Arm. The story is, it's set in the Warring States period. Oddly enough, also called Hinomoto. I had to look this up. Hinomoto is a really obscure alternate way to pronounce the characters that make up Nihon, the Japanese word for Japan. So, anyway. It's interesting that what I consider two of the worst shows of this past season both use that term for the world that they're in, the sort of alternate Japan. In this case, it's the Warring States period, so it's, except there are, special weapons and magic and so on, so it's clearly not really the Warring States period of Japan. But obviously, if you look at this, I mean, if somebody told me that somebody in Japan was making an anime about blow-up sex dolls, I would say that's an image from it, because that's what that looks like. But it isn't. This one, I didn't even make it through the first episode. The animation was that bad. I went, I don't care what whether this story is going to make sense in the next 23 minutes. I can't watch this, and just bailed. Your mileage may vary. It may turn out to be, something you can sort of hold your nose and pretend that the, animation isn't as bad as it is. I did that with, the 2016 Berserk, because the story of Berserk is so amazing that I kind of, this animation is just so horrendous, but it's Berserk. And I gave up after like 4 episodes. This, I gave up after like 15 minutes. So yeah, Rusted Armors, don't waste your time. It's ugly. That's the best way to put it. Ugly is ugly. All right, my next mid. And this is the middest of the mids. It is the fade there. It is the strongest sage with the weakest crest, which is nothing to do with a person with bad teeth and bad toothpaste. So your main character here, the boy in the middle, Gaius, Matthias Hildesheimer. He is a reborn, superpowered mage from thousands of years ago. He's not Annas Voldegard, although that's kind of the character he is. He winds up surrounding himself with these 3 women from his magical academy, plus this transformed dragon, who's the red-haired twin tail in the front. So it looks like it's a harem, but it's not. There's like no harem activity. There's a little bit of teasing about the fact that he's probably interested in the blonde. And he is with full memories, the reincarnation of an adult man who, literally fought off demon lords to their deaths thousands of years ago. And he blushes and can't even say that he's interested in her. It's just dumb. And again, I don't know why I finished it. I think maybe because I was hoping that it would become a harem, that he would become an Annos Voldegard kind of guy and just really be a mega Chad. Nope. It's just 12 episodes of them slowly discovering that there's a demon conspiracy that, is permeating this kingdom that they're a part of, and eventually fighting that off. And going to various labyrinths to get, different powers and so on. Ari Ferretta. It's not a ripoff of Ari Ferretta, but it's sort of that, but without Ari Ferretta's edgelord violence, and it is so mid that I guarantee I'm not going to remember this in a year. I'll be going through stuff like my anime list rundown like 2 or 3 years ago and go, what is this show? Did I watch this? I don't remember watching this. So yeah, don't bother. Don't waste your time. And the animation, this is one of the demons that he's fighting, at one point in the show. The animation is just not great. It's not terrible. It's certainly not Rusted Armors. It's not CG. But it's not good. All right. The next best. Where is it? There we go. Akebi's Sailor Uniform. This is one of the most beautiful anime you'll ever see. The art style. This image right here is not from, a promotional poster. This is in the anime. The shading on the folds of the uniform, the hair, this is typical of this anime. It's the story of Akebi Komichi, who lives in such a rural part of Japan that she's always ever been the only student in her grade school classes. Up until a few years prior to this takes place, the only student in her entire school until her younger sister becomes old enough to start grade school. She gets accepted to this really prestigious Rubai Academy, which is located in this very remote farming valley, because they want it to be away from Tokyo and so on, which is a boarding school, so it's a full British-style middle school plus high school. So she gets accepted in there, and one of the things she's most excited about is that she gets to wear, the sailor uniform that like her mom wears, and her mom's a seamstress, so makes her a sailor uniform. And it turns out that in the at least 13 years, because she's 13 years old, probably more like 15 to 20, since her mom was in school, they don't wear sailor uniforms anymore. So she's super embarrassed and blah, blah. And that's the nature of the conflict, if there's any, about this show. And there's not. It's a moe show. It's a really feel-good show about, a very outgoing, athletic, friendly young woman who doesn't have any friends and really wants to make a lot of friends and does everything she can to do that, and it works. Now, I guess that's kind of giving stuff away, but, she makes a lot of friends. There's very little conflict. And when there is, it's believable conflict, and she rises to it strongly, but without being mean about it. And the conflict makes sense. There's one point where, somebody who has seen her swim says, Komichi is a really good swimmer. And a girl who was a competitive swimmer in her grade school challenges her. And she's kind of, not blunt, well, not rough, but kind of blunt about the challenge. And Komichi rises to the occasion and, at least puts out a really good effort. I won't say whether she wins or not. Now, even though it's an incredibly wholesome show and she makes all of these wonderful friends, the show has jokingly been called Foot Fetish the Anime, because there are more shots like this throughout this entire anime. This is from the very beginning, where she gets a ride back from some far fields that she'd been running and basically practicing almost gymnastics flips. Well, basically gymnastics flips. And there are so many shots of, Komichi's and other girls' legs and feet and so on. It's, somebody likes feet. Now, the creators behind this anime are all women. It's a completely women-led creative team. Character designers, key animator, director, and so on. But one of the things that nobody ever says about this series that I've seen so far, and it is true, but I don't think people want to say it this way, is it is also an ecchi series. And if you don't think that there are ecchi series out there with middle school girls, you've never seen Strike Witches, one of the most popular animes in the last decade or so. There are plenty of images of not exceedingly lewd, but definitely racy images of Akebi, mostly, but other girls as well. I think the difference is, and why people don't want to call it ecchi, is because in almost no cases, there's a few, but almost no cases, any of these views are not male gaze. They are not a camera angle. There's no camera, it's an anime, but there's no drawn angle that is there literally just to show what a guy would be looking at if he happened to be laying on the ground looking up a skirt, or towering over a girl looking down a blouse, or what, typical male gaze stuff that aren't that don't make sense in the story because nobody is in that angle. It's literally the director saying, hey, look at this girl's butt under her skirt. That's not the case in here for the most part. In almost every instance where you see something that is a pretty sexy or lewd look on a character, it's because another character is looking, or it's in a situation where it's natural for that to happen. And I don't know whether you would call that female gaze, but it's clear that it's intended to celebrate the beauty of a fit, athletic young woman, as opposed to just stare creepily at a fit, athletic young woman. Another example is that none of these characters are shown with extremely exaggerated characteristics. There are no super sexy, big butt, big boob, typical stuff that you see in a show with male gaze ecchi. There is a busty, curvy character. Gamer Brasileiro, welcome to the show. There is a busty character who is shown in a tennis uniform, tight white knit top, white skirt, pleated skirt. But her part of the story in that episode is that she was a grade school tennis player, and once she hit puberty, she started getting curvier, and she feels really self-conscious about that, and wouldn't have even been in the uniform and playing tennis if it wasn't for the fact that, this is the school athletics festival, and, they want people with experience, who can play tennis. Her class wants to win, the athletic competition. Gamer Brasileiro, you're from Brazil. Yes, that is okay. And I'm glad you joined us. They portray it wonderfully as this girl coming to, through Akebi's help, accept the fact that this is who she is now. She still loves athleticism. She still loves tennis. She wants to play tennis. And she's comfortable with the fact that parts of her move a lot more than they did when she was playing it fairly competitively in grade school. And there's an awful lot of that, Akebi's friendship helps people come to accept themselves kind of stories. But within those presentations, there are, views of, what would be considered very sexy views of these women. They're just not done with a typical ecchi male gaze, and that's super refreshing. Even something like Strike Witches, when it happens, it's pretty clear that any of like the panty shots and so on are male gaze shots. Even though that is pretty feminist forward as far as the nature of the characters and what they do, it's still, those views are male gaze. That is not the case with Akebi. And it's a wonderful, refreshing way to see creators present this. So, that was my last of my best. Akebi Sailor Uniform. Absolutely 100% recommend watching it for the beauty of the animation, if nothing else. There's not a whole lot of drama or conflict or anything. It's a good, well-written story, but it's pretty moe. It's, you watch, young girls become friends. Or young women become friends. And that's it. But it is a very positive and uplifting story, for that. And again, because of Akebi's unrelenting positivity. So, that's it, folks. That is my rundown. What have we got coming up? Well, before I get into that, we are going to talk about our last promo. That is our Patreon page, patreon.com/nerdcaliber. Love to have you go check it out. If you decide you want to be a patron and help us out, of course we'd love that. We have 3 tiers. Lowest one is just $2 a month, and it will help us get to more cons. I'll tell you about what cons are coming up very soon. What's coming up tomorrow night is Nerd Week Live, our nerd news show. Got some interesting stuff. Again, not a huge roster of topics. It's been a nice, quiet couple of weeks. But we definitely have some things coming up. Thursday's show, Full Fat Spoiler Chat this week, is going to be about Moonfall, movie on HBO Max. And I completely forgot to bring it up and find out what we're going to be doing on No Nerd Caliber next Monday, which is a No Nerd Caliber show, not an Anime Octane show. And I can tell you right now that it will be top 3 Disney reboots or remakes. Which makes me wonder what Disney show or movie we're going to be covering on that week on Thursday. I can't remember. But that's what we'll be doing on our streaming stuff in the next week. What we'll be doing for cons is this coming Saturday in the Weston Waterfront in South Boston. We will be at Wicked Comic Con. We'll be down on the lower level hallway in front of the ballrooms. We'll be all the way down at the end. You'll see us next to Red Raven Studios. They'll have a huge display. We'll have a backdrop and a couple of lights. But, so if you go all the way to the end and see this great big crazy display of, studio stuff, that's Red Raven. We're the guys next to them. And let's see. At the end of this month, we will be at, well, not quite the end. The next to the last weekend, 21st through 24th, we'll be at PAX East. On the 23rd, 7:30 p.m. at Arachnid Theater, our cosplay and photography shootout. We'll be having that. It's a blast. If you're a photographer or a cosplayer and you want to come and participate, please show up as early as they'll let you in the doors. Before 7:30. I mean, don't show up to the Arachnid Theater at like 9 in the morning. It's not going to do you any good for us. And if you aren't and you don't want to participate, but you want to watch these people run around like crazy, trying to get really creative images in a very short amount of time, it's a blast. It's a hoot. And then at the end of May, Anime Boston, I will be running the photo department. The cosplay photography studio will be room 102. That's where I'll be working out of. So come see me. That's where Nerd Caliber will be. We will not have a table in Community Row because we don't have an event to promote. So we'll leave it for people who do. And so that's where you'll get your free Nerd Caliber photos. And your free Anime Boston photos. They'll just happen to be the same photos this year. They'll go up on both websites. So we will see you at one of those upcoming cons, at one of our upcoming shows. In the meantime, folks, please stay safe. And we will see you later.